trying to find a legal pathway to entry into this country, gave them the opportunity to use this app to find that way. Now, one of the things that this app not being there, and this article talks about here, Juarez, if you don't know, Juarez is in Mexico, and it's literally right across from El Paso. I mean, it's there's a bridge leading between the two, or several bridges, but Juarez is literally as close. I can't think of a closer border town to a town in the United States. I'm sure there are. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. But
El Paso border crossing, or El Paso Juarez border crossing, just so you know, is the second busiest border crossing next to San Diego, Tijuana.
Fair enough. Actually, not that long ago, I did the crossed into Juarez from El Paso legally. So one of the issues going on is now a lot of these folks are being or maintained in Mexico. We're not really here to get into the politics of all that, what that may mean. That does cause some other potential humanitarian issues, but they are, to be clear, regardless of where you may stand on the immigration position or views, that these people are not in the United States. These people using this app are not here at this point. So that's not an issue like, hey, good thing this app's done. I know some people who are supporting the policies of deportation think that that's going to help keep people out, and I guess that might be an ancillary effect of it, but the main impact of that is not supposed to potentially curb the immigration, although that likely will be an impact of that, because people who are seeking legal entry into the states, it'll be much harder to do so at this point. Now, that's again, we're only a little over a week into this presidency, so I'm sure a lot of these things will be sorted out, but that's where we stand right now. In terms of, do you want to talk any more about that? Because I guess we can talk more about just, immigration part.
There was just a lot of confusion about what the app actually was and who it affects. So just to, if you are currently in the United States, this app will not affect you one way or the other.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. If you're in the States, this doesn't have anything to deal with regarding your immigration status, your immigration positioning. This is strictly for people who were seeking potential asylum here in the United States who were outside of the United States. It dealt with appointments, making that. So a lot of people who had appointments, I didn't bring this up, but the people may have had appointments for months at a time. Right now, they're kind of in no man's land, literally, and with regard to appointments. They don't have their appointment is essentially wiped off. They have to get another avenue to try and set such an appointment at this time. So, I think that's, since we're talking about immigration, though, let's talk about, there is a lot of confusion and questions now, and I'm going to try and shed some light on what the immigration, what you potentially would do or should do if you are, your immigration status is, if you're, let's say you are stopped, or whether you are here, you have a legal status here or you don't have legal status in the United States. Here's some things that you could potentially or should potentially do if you are stopped, right? So if law enforcement, right, inquires, I want to make sure I got some of my notes here. I want to make sure I get this right for you. But if law enforcement does ask about your immigration status, okay, you do have the right to remain silent. Similar to an arrest, you are not obligated to discuss your immigration or citizenship status with police or immigration agents or other officials. Just as in like an arrest you may have seen on TV, or if you have been in a criminal situation before, anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. This time we're talking about an immigration court. Also, if you're documentation, it's important that if you're over 18, you should be carrying your immigration documents with you at all times. That can just be, let's be clear, the real ID, if you're familiar, the ID that has that little yellow star on it, that, in order, it's May of this year, at that point, in order to fly, you're going to need that ID. So we're talking that. We could be talking your passport, but
passport card.
yeah, passport card or passport. So now let's be clear. If an immigration agent does request these papers, you must show them and have them with you. If you don't have them, you can remain silent, and you can also ask to speak with an attorney. But yes, if you don't have those documents at that point, then an immigration agent does have the right to take additional steps to detain. As far as a search goes, if an immigration agent asks to search your belongings, you do have the right to refuse unless they have probable cause. Now, the term probable cause is it's a loaded word, right? Or loaded phrase, excuse me. So when you're talking probable cause, what would that potentially be? Now, they could cite what they have their probable cause. Certainly, if there's some kind of warrant involved, they've already had to prove independently to a judge that there's a probable cause of some sort. So they've had to have some. So they sign off on that. If they do that, they'd have to indicate there was some indication of something that you did or showed that led them to want to conduct a search. Certainly, if they ask you and you consent to it, they've already allowed that. You don't necessarily have to consent to that search, though. Now, I talked about law enforcement. If you have the police or immigration agent, they stop you. Make sure that you're calm. Don't run, resist, or obstruct them, and make sure your hands are always visible. These are just more common sense type advice. You don't want to give an officer or someone a reason to have to take additional action because they felt that you put them in danger. Again, you do have the right to remain silent. You do need to make sure you clearly state that in some manner or convey that. Sometimes there could be a language, especially if we're talking immigration status. There could be a language barrier, so you do need to, in some way, convey that clearly. That hey, I want to remain silent here. Again, you don't have to consent to a search. However, the police do have the right or ability to pat you down if they believe that there is if they believe that there is a reason that you may be having a weapon or in possession of a weapon. They do have that right to secure, make sure that there's a safe scene. As far as legal representation, if you are arrested by the police, you do have the right for a government-appointed lawyer. If detained by ICE, Immigration and Customs, if you've heard that term a lot, you also have the right to consult with a lawyer. But in the ICE circumstance, just to be clear, the government is not required to provide you with legal representation. So let's be clear, that's a big distinction. With the police, you are you have a right to a government-appointed attorney, but in the ICE situation, you do not. And you also, this is important too, and this is kind of I can see this both ways. You're not required to answer questions about your birthplace, citizenship, or how you entered the country. Now, let's talk about that. So if you think you have everything lined up, like legally you're here in the United States legally, you have proper documentation that way, maybe, again, let's be clear, this is not, even though we're answering legal questions, this is not legal advice, but, you do have the ability to, you can talk about that time, but you're not required to. If you think that could potentially short circuit or shortcut some process, here I have these processes here, right here, then that might help that process right there. However, you do not have an obligation to talk about your status or how you enter the country. Now, we've heard a lot about people who are either agents who are coming to schools, homes, businesses, and let's talk about what that is. with regard to if they come to your home, right? If agents come to your home, you don't have to let police or immigration agents into your home unless they have a valid warrant. And let's be clear, a valid warrant meant that they had to go before some kind of judge who signed off. They said, we have this probable cause to do X, Y, and Z, and a judge signs off for those specific reasons. So if they do show you a warrant, make sure that they show it to you clearly, either through a window or slide it to a door so you can see it. However, let's be clear here, and this is something I learned. There's a form, an I-205, again, I-205, which does not permit entry without your consent. So it's a warrant of removal or deportation. Does not permit entry without your without your consent. So if that's the situation, they're showing that form, you do not have to let them in. However, or at the same time, remember you still have the right to remain silent in this situation. Again, it doesn't mean by remaining silent that doesn't mean that they don't have the ability or right to detain you or take you in, but you still don't have to speak at that time. Now let's talk about something to chime in there with.
I would say that if you're speaking to law enforcement and you're kind of at the end of the conversation or they're not being cooperative or whatever, the simple question to ask is, am I being detained?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's actually fair. We do want to talk about that part.
And then there's the ACLU page up there if you want to switch over to tab.
Yeah, again, these are, let's see here.
Towards the left.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So this is the ACLU. Again, this is not politically motivated or indicated here. What we are doing here is to at least help you know what your rights should be.
Give legal insight.
Yeah, some legal insight on it. So let's see here. We're going down to if you're arrested, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here you go. I'm going to highlight some of these. If you are arrested or detained, remember again, if you want to remain silent, again, there could be some communication issues. You do have the right to stay silent, ask for a lawyer immediately, and you don't have to give any other explanations at all. You do also have the right to make a phone call, a local phone call, if you're making to a lawyer. Again, that call is protected by attorney-client privilege. You hear that a lot. But if a call is to a lawyer, they're not allowed to listen in. However, other calls, they do have the right to listen in if you're just calling, a family member or somebody else. That call is not protected, so be aware of that.
Say can and will be used against you.
Oh, if you're just talking about the weather, yeah. But if you're giving certain information, then they have every right to use that.
Guilt over the phone.
Yeah, that could be admission, of course.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So number one advice to anybody that gets detained.
Yeah.
Is forget calling your family. Call us first.
Yeah, that would be fair. Call us. If not us, then at least a lawyer. Although this is as good a lawyer as any to call, but you definitely need to call a lawyer on that.
Yep. And a call to a lawyer is the only call that is protected.
That's fair enough. If you've been detained by ICE again, you do have the right to contact your consulate. I'm going to guess you're not carrying a consulate phone number around with you, although at this point that would probably be a great idea to know your actual consulate and have a number for them that you can use in an emergency situation. Another important piece is to remember your immigration number, otherwise known as an A number, that you can give it to your family, and it will help family members to locate you. That's an identification number for you if, for some reason you are detained in that manner. And again, we talked about you should be carrying your immigration documents with you. You should also have a trusted family member or friend also have a copy of those. Case they can speak up on your behalf. If you're not able to access those documents at some point, you don't have them on you, at least there's someone else who has access to it who at least can at least provide you with a copy of them and help you in that process, because these processes you're seeing, they're kind of moving quickly,
very quickly. This might not protect you 100% because you probably need a hard copy, but having pictures of those documents can hurt.
Oh yeah, you mean like on your phone?
Yeah, on your phone.
Yeah, sure. On your phone, you can lock You can put it in like a locked folder.
Yeah, you can do a private, secured folder or something.
Yeah,
Like that.
secure folder. That's actually a good idea. You should have copies of those as well. Again, you never know when you you may have an immigration situation and you want to be prepared should that occur. So absolutely, you should also have a picture. Just stick it in a locked folder on your phone that only you can access, so you can be prepared in these situations. Let's talk a little about planning ahead. It's I know you may say, well, I'm here legally, I don't have anything to worry about. Maybe that's the case, but right now there's a lot of confusion. There may be you may be in a situation you didn't expect yourself to be in. So let's make sure that if you are prepared. You've got phone numbers memorized. I know most of us don't anymore because we have our cell phones and we just hit a name, so we don't memorize the numbers. It's important to memorize an important number of a family member, a spouse, something like that. So if you're in a situation, you do have the ability to call that person. Memorize our number, 702-222-2115. Give us a call. Also, remember all your important documents, like your birth certificates, immigration papers. Keep them, passport, whatever. Make sure they're kept in a safe place too. You have a copy with you, but you keep them in a safe place as well, so that if you run into a situation, you know where they are. You're not scrambling around, and that these could be the difference between a situation where you're cleared, or it could be a situation where you face a court situation or deportation situation that you never expected. So again, these are different times here, and it's important that at least aware of what your rights are. Just as these executive orders that have gone out, whether you agree with them or not, they are valid this time, and the ones that potentially aren't, courts have stepped in. So don't think that you're going to wait on an argument saying, aha, that was wrong. If there's not a couple of things have a lot of the executive orders have stood up. I know the birthright one is at least temporarily blocked, where they're as of now, if you're born in the United States, you're considered a United States citizen. There was an executive order to revoke that, and at least for the time being, it's been blocked by a federal judge. But that's temporary. We'll see how that plays out. Again, a lot of these we're only a little over a week in, so we'll see how these play out.
One more thing. If you are, let's say, a citizen that gets detained, stay calm.
Yeah, that's sure. I mean, listen, stay calm. It's got to be jarring, especially if you've never had any interaction with law enforcement before. But the important thing is, stay calm. We don't. I don't work for them. No. He doesn't work for them, so I don't. I can't speak for them. But you should be cleared once that gets. If you're here citizen-wise. But there, right now there's levels of confusion, and you adding to that with anger and other things is just going to spur on some actions you might not want. Yep. Now, one thing, one thing that I should mention, we've talked a lot about citizen stuff. If you are a non-citizen of the United States, it's important that you talk to a lawyer about the effect, if you have a criminal conviction or plea, what that affects your immigration status. But make sure that if you're discussing your immigration status, it's only with your lawyer. While you're in jail, a prison, something like that, a immigration agent may visit you, but don't answer or take anything or discuss anything unless you've already talked it over with a lawyer, right? We're not sitting here to try and pump up business that way, but it's important that you're making sure that you are talking to a lawyer, with a lawyer, at some point here, because your rights, you could be irrevocably affected, and before you know it, you could be potentially deported if you did not follow the proper steps. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that's kind of some of the main stuff dealing with the immigration. Again, this is gonna, we're gonna, as we do more of these shows, more issues will be coming up. There'll be potential executive orders or even things passed through the legislative bodies impacting that. But you've already seen already that a number of people have been deported, and so it's a legal process. I'm saying legal, not illegal. It's a legal process at this point. So, that's where we live now. So thinking that you're going to be the one guy or gal to shake it up. There's a phrase FAFO, right, out there. So I think a lot of you know what that means. F around and find out. You could find that out, and then suddenly you don't like the place you're in. So as far as immigration, I think that's all I got for now. But I'm open to get another idea, and that I'm open to hear it. You got something?
Yeah, the next thing we're going to talk about is the Silk Road case.
Yeah.
The founder of the Silk Road, Ross, how do you pronounce his last name? Ulbricht or something like that?
Ulbricht, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was recently pardoned by President Trump. And the case is fascinating because he was convicted 10 years ago for attempted murder of an individual that does not exist.
Yeah.
And then, now, I know you don't like using Wikipedia, but they actually have a very good breakdown of the case.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, we will use a little Wikipedia, but as a big warning notice here, we understand that Wikipedia
and this case is actually from the FBI's press release from 10 years ago.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So right here, this is, I'll give you a little taste of this. Well, this has some back down here. Do you don't like this one as much?
I like this one too. The Wikipedia one just is easier to break down.
Fair enough. All right, maybe we'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
But this Ross Ulbricht, he created the Silk Road website. He was known as Dread Pirate Roberts, or also known as Silk Road. So he was found guilty back in 2015 on 7 counts of connection with the operation ownership of Silk Road, a hidden website designed to enable its users to buy and sell illegal drugs and other unlawful goods and services anonymously and beyond the reach of law enforcement. Again, this is a FBI U.S. Attorney's brief. A press release. So it's going to have a little bit of a slant to it.
Slightly.
But so essentially, and I'll click over here to Wikipedia again. Whenever using that, don't use that as your only source. But as far as he was with this Russ Ulbricht, he started Silk Road. He was I guess you could consider him a bright guy, right? I mean, that's more your world.
He was a very bright guy. Very, very talented as far as the ability to set this up, use the dark web to do it. I'm actually really impressed. He only made a handful of mistakes that got him caught, honestly.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. I think I'll talk about that part when I was learning about him a little more. He used the Tor network, right? TOR.
Yeah, he used the Tor network basically.
Which was using data encryption, and so to be clear again, it's not a political, but he had a political show, but he was more of a libertarian background.
Yeah, well, his personal beliefs are libertarian.
Yeah, so so that's limited government involvement.
More personal freedom choice or personal choices, freedom of personal choices.
Yes,
especially when it comes to drugs, things like that.
Correct. Fair enough. Okay, so using this Tor site, they could by using Tor, it concealed the IP address as well as it was using Bitcoin, right? For the transaction.
For the transaction, so the Tor network allows it so that it's basically a browser that uses relays to go from one server to another, so that it makes it really, really, really difficult to trace anything back.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is, of course, if you do it right, it could be 100% anonymous.
Yeah, but it's benefits, except if you talk to people who lost millions in Bitcoin because it was anonymous and their money gets sucked away.
Yeah, that's the downside to it. Is that it's the beauty is that it's anonymous. The downside is that it's anonymous.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what would happen on this site, or what was claimed to have happened, is that people would use it. Is it fair to say it's more your area, more dark web type stuff here?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Like 1,000% dark web.
Okay.
There would be no transaction on the Silk Road that was legal. What's the point of doing anything on Silk Road that was legal?
Okay. Right, you can still legal ways to do that. But anyway, so people would be using that, and apparently it was used frequently for drug transactions. And I guess that was the main thing, right?
Well,
drug transactions.
And illegal services, like murder for hire, things like that too.
Yeah. So what happened with how this guy initially was caught was that a few ways a drug agency or DEA investigator infiltrated the site and became an admin. Oh, okay. So they got inside information to the site's operations. Okay, that's funny, or more interesting. But so when they were showing this guy's chats, some of the steps they did, they saw that it was coming from a Pacific time zone, so that helped narrow down where they were looking. And then they also an IRS investigator working with the DEA. He also used I guess he used this username called Altoid, and to announce the website. And then they found him on another place posting under that same Altoid name. So they helped link to his email address, which then contained his full name. So, as we all know, there's always a footprint left on the web.
Well, the downside of being a criminal is that you have to be correct 100% of the time.
That's
the benefit of being a cop, is that the criminals only need to screw up one time for you to win.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So when he did that, apparently they tracked him down to a library. They distracted him in the library, and in so doing, were able to confiscate his laptop that was open.
He already logged into his laptop.
Oh, he logged in, right?
But if he could have encrypted and just destroyed everything with a single press of a button.
Right.
So that's why they distracted him and grabbed that laptop and ran.
Yeah, because he could have it all would have been gone.
Yeah, a single keystroke and he could have been just deleted everything.
So they then put in a USB drive, took everything down, and held him without bail. So the things he was charged with: engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to commit computer hacking, and then this is the real wham banger.
The interesting part.
Yeah, so it was alleged that he paid approximately $730,000 in murder for hire deals. Okay. Okay, nice. Targeting at least 5 people because they threatened to reveal his enterprise, and these enterprises, like we said, run on anonymity, so any revelation would make it, I guess, almost useless at that point.
That and if they were no longer anonymous, that would open it up to prosecution.
Well, prosecution, of course, but then no one would, if people didn't feel they had anonymity on it, they'd just go away from it. So
it would destroy everything.
Double whammy. He would go down and he would lose his entire, which he ended up doing anyway. Yeah. But so the killings that were alleged to happen never actually occurred. First off,
because the victims didn't actually exist.
I was going to get to that. Yeah. Yes. So that brings up an interesting point as I was looking at this and thinking about this. One of the interesting points that it brought up was that, when we were in law school, one of our first criminal law classes, you learn about something called, it's a Latin term, mens rea, which is the mind, the intent, right? So a crime can be committed, the intent was there to do it. That's why you see those conspiracy charges there. So this Dread Pirate Roberts, this Ulbricht, even though these people didn't presumably exist, he was still charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Yeah. Thank you. longer day, right? So interestingly, he was found that said he was sending messages inquiring about, finding someone who would commit these murders of people that did not exist. Business. The people that are threatening business, excuse me.
But didn't exist.
They didn't exist. So interestingly, what ended up happening, he was convicted. As we were starting looking at FBI part, he was convicted, and he was sentenced with double life imprisonment. So 2 life sentences,
plus 40 years.
Plus 40 years without the possibility of parole. So now they're really just piling on at that point. But sometimes, just so you know too, sometimes people wonder, why do they do all that? Well, sometimes charges can get thrown out. Things can there can be changes to sentencing. So these are put in place if they believe that they're just put in place so that it's there, because things can change along the way, as we'll find out here. He was also ordered to pay about $183 million in restitution, based on the sales of illegal drugs. I wonder how much of that was paid back.
This is the interesting part.
Yeah.
The guy had about $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and the government seized it.
They seized it.
Yeah, there's more on the bottom over there when you're.
On which one? On this Wikipedia?
No, like if you keep reading, it'll show you after the conviction what happened.
Okay. Well, it's a nice little twist. Again, I'm not going to lead on this one because I have not really read about this part, but it did say that following his conviction, 2 of the federal agents who participated in the investigation were arrested and charged with wire fraud and money laundering.
Now, as far as I know, that was not connected to his case.
No, but he could argue that it impacted their investigation in some way.
Yeah, it could open up the door for it.
Again, yeah, which it did on some level.
But it failed, from what I remember.
Yeah. Again, this is Wikipedia, so we'd have. I haven't read this part as much, but he was sentenced that way. They did file an appeal, but they're saying that they withheld this malfeasance of the agents. Malfeasance being the bad stuff from these agents. And he also said his sentence was too harsh, but an appeals court upheld the conviction, and they affirmed the court's denial of his motion to suppress certain evidence. And then he filed what's called a petition for certiorari. So you're asking I know we see a lot of these shows like, I'll appeal. Well, every time you appeal, right, the court has to, in most states you at least have one right of appeal, if you will. But beyond that, I said states, or even at a federal level, you have right to one level. But beyond that, the court has to agree to want to hear your case. As you can imagine, I don't know the percentage. I used to know this, but the number of cases that the U.S. Supreme Court actually agrees to see is
minuscule.
I mean, it's no low. I don't even know if it's even 1%, but let's say
from what I remember, it's less than 1%.
Yeah. So most of those cases don't even get to see that point. Like, I'll appeal to the Supreme Court. Like, okay, great, but they don't have to hear your case.
Yeah.
And that can be anybody. There's been cases that they've denied to hear from presidents. From all different people. So that's not just that. That's a small chance here.
And the Supreme Court doesn't need a reason to not hear you. It could be just we don't feel like it.
Pretty much, if they don't think it's issue a novel issue
or a constitutional issue,
or constitutional one, or one that they're itching to get their hands on, But and in this case, of course, they denied hearing his appeal. So anyway, so because of the severity of his penalty, his sentence, there were calls after he was convicted in jail or in prison that people wanted to free him. They thought it was excessive. And certainly in the libertarian front, a lot of the people for prison reform and libertarians and also people in the crypto world all thought it was he should be freed, or at minimum a much lighter sentence. Again, a lot of libertarians calling for his release. One of the things interesting, which ended up happening, but during his campaign, President Trump did say that if he was elected president, he would commute the sentence the first day in office, because for a lot of reasons, both political and perhaps based on the story itself. But and when Trump was elected president, he did commute his sentence. We'll talk about the pardon here in just a minute here. Well, this is interesting. So that let's see, in 2021, his prosecutors and the defense, they agreed that Ulbricht would relinquish any ownership of any newly discovered fund of about 50,000 Bitcoin, which is, worth a cool $5.35 billion now.
I should have given that up.
That was seized from a hacker. But the Bitcoin had been stolen from Silk Road, and Ulbricht had not been successful to get it back. So the government traced and used that Bitcoin, and then they agreed the fund would be used to pay off his debt in his criminal case. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Justice would take custody of the Bitcoin.
Yep.
Well, that's interesting.
And the anonymity of Bitcoin isn't all that if the DOJ could find stolen Bitcoin just like that.
Yeah, right. How did that happen so easily? I'm wondering.
Well, tracing the wallets?
Yeah.
Somebody got messy or sloppy somewhere. Like I said before, criminals have to be correct 100% of the time to get away with it. Mm-hmm. Prosecutors, cops, they only need to be be around when somebody screws up.
So, yeah, on Trump's, I guess technically the second day, the 21st of 2025, he was given a full and unconditional pardon following a promise that Trump had made at the Libertarian National Convention, and he said that he gave a full unconditional pardon. Mm-hmm. And let's see, the scum that worked to convict him were some of the same lunatics who were involved in the modern-day weaponization of government against me. He was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Ridiculous. Okay, well, I mean, some of the stuff was pretty heinous there, but he has now been fully pardoned, so he's out. He's back, and I'm guessing no Silk Road is there's no Silk Road 2 going on at this point, so I think that's we're staying out of that one.
Well, others have taken up the mantle since. There's plenty of marketplaces on the in the deep web, or the dark web, or deep web that people just don't know about at the moment. But there's plenty.
Sure. As fast as they can probably put them up, people are I'm guessing that the government's tracking on some level, but I don't know if they can keep up with that.
Well, it's just like the scammer call centers. As soon as you take one down, another 20 pop up, and it's just a sheer numbers game. It's hard to track them down. Any of these tour-based marketplaces. Sure. It's hard to track them down in the first place, but there's so many of them. It's not like it's just one place. There's so many that it is logistically impossible to shut them all down.
Sure. Hey, before we do one more thing, can I bring up that insurance thing I sent to you?
Yes. I think I still have that up.
I don't want to go through your stuff here.
Yeah, go through all of them. That's fine.
Well, it was here. I sent it to you here, but I don't want to.
Yeah, that's fine.
There it is. Will that pull it up?
And then, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this one here. This is, I'm talking specifically about Nevada, but this is, I think it's fair to say this is mostly countrywide, as the RJ's trying to get. I do pay for it, but they're trying to get you to pay for it, I guess. So the title is A Huge Expense, Auto Insurance Become Unaffordable for Some Nevadans. We every day here we deal with insurance companies. We fight them. We work with them. Even though if we're taking a case on whether it's someone who's been hit by another car, if someone who's on a motorcycle has been hit, a pedestrian, someone who maybe fall in a, that won't deal so much with the auto insurance, but talk about our auto cases. We, even though we are pursuing the person who committed the negligence, we are ultimately seeking compensation for the most part from insurance companies. That's why you have your insurance, to help you out in the time where you may have been negligent and committed, not paying attention, hit someone from behind, speeding, anything like that. Insurance companies never lose, right? Let's get that through our heads here. Whether, even if they pay out, they've already collected premiums for a number of years. They've collected premiums from a whole area, so they have properly protected their risk. And if they haven't, as we talked about last time, right, with California, in some ways they'll pull out of an area, or they'll increase rates so much that they'll be protected, right? So what we're finding out here in Nevada, not new news, but it just really hits home for people more now, is that insurance companies are raising rates significantly here in Nevada. Especially people who have had no history, no hits on their insurance, no use of their insurance. But there's been several providers that have raised the rates. Let's talk here. Here we go. According to Insurify, Nevada has the 7th highest auto insurance rates in the country. 7th. With the cost expected to rise over $3,000 annually in the new year. The national average for full coverage insurance is $2,300 annually. So, just again, we're talking all average numbers right now, but that puts us, I'm just doing quick math here, so it's 700. So, like roughly 30% higher than the national average.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Okay, so there you go. And so down here, they're saying, let's see. Wow. Okay. So in 2024, they're saying the average cost for full coverage of car insurance. Now, full coverage. All right, I'll talk about this briefly. So full coverage, we have a lot of clients who tell us they have full coverage, okay? When that really means, for most of them, when I think of full coverage, I think that you have liability coverage, you have uninsured and uninsured coverage. There's some message up here. Uninsured and underinsured coverage, and you potentially have medical payments coverage. But let's just talk about uninsured and underinsured. Uninsured is if the other driver has no insurance. Underinsured is if the other driver doesn't have enough insurance to cover the injuries you sustained in an accident. But a lot of times with our clients, full coverage means that all they have is liability. So I'm probably going to assume this article, when they're saying full coverage car insurance, means liability. But they're saying here that the full coverage was, in Nevada, was $2,973, so almost $3,000 annually. And then the cost for this year in 2025 is supposed to be 8% higher, so roughly $3,200. This is average, so people are going to be below and people will definitely be higher. But the average is roughly $3,200. Now, wow, look how much it's jumped, right? So in reference, according to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, in 2022, the combined average premium in Nevada was $1,400. So we've seen a doubling in 2 years. It's beautiful. 2 years doubling.
Sounds about right. It's expensive.
Wow. I mean, I'm not surprised. It just still sucks. I mean, that's like...
It's more than to be expected. I mean...
Yeah.
It's not surprising.
No,
but
it's a disproportionate response.
It is.
And then some people, here's a couple talks about they save money every month, but they're not saving enough to cover this. I mean, these are astronomical leaps.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what they said. Their example is pretty much what I just said, right? In July 2023, they're paying $1,800 for their insurance every 6 months. But by 2024, their car insurance increased $2,900. So, like almost a 60% increase. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So here we go. According to the Consumer Price Index, motor vehicle insurance increased the most after eggs. Okay, so they're tracking goods. So we've got eggs, and we've all seen what eggs price have done. Now we've got motor vehicle insurance, increasing an 11.3% jump. Well, we're seeing much higher than that. Here we go. In Nevada, let's call them all out. At least 6 auto insurers, including Allstate and Farmers, raised their rates for private vehicles by at least 10% in October, according to the Nevada Division of Insurance. Four auto insurers, have requested to raise rates in November and into the new year. So as you'll see here, in order to raise rates, here, it says all insurers must go through the Nevada Division of Insurance when requesting a rate change. Now, the actual division approved rate is typically lower than the rate hike requested. So one of these insurance companies comes in saying, I want to raise the rates 30%, and then Nevada Division of Insurance allegedly comes in and says, okay, you can't raise it that much, but you can raise it this much. Because their mission is, quote, to protect the rights of Nevada consumers and ensure financial solvency of insurers. Financial solvency of insurers. Okay.
That's interesting to me too.
I mean, I'm not going to say, listen, we've had cases before where we've had insurers go out of business here. Ones that targeted certain high-risk groups, and then they didn't want to pay them, and then they got out. But then the approved rates cannot be, quote, excessive or discriminatory, according to the division. This becomes tough because I always recommend that when you can, that you have on your policy, you have your liability coverage. In Nevada, the minimum is $25,000 for per person in an accident, and no more than $50,000. That's the minimum. You can have more than that. Now, again, remember the point of the insurance is to protect you because, without the insurance, someone could come after you directly. And you may say, well, great, I don't have anything. But remember, they still have the right to go after they potentially assets if you have any. They can, if they get a judgment, can go and garnish wages where you work. So it's not, it is important to have the proper amount of insurance. You don't want to expose yourself unnecessarily, And I always recommend that you have this underinsured and uninsured coverage because we are seeing a number of people making the choice to, get insurance, get their car insured, and then potentially drop the insurance. Is that an offense that you can be ticketed for? Absolutely. But people have been willing to take that risk, unfortunately. You don't want to leave yourself exposed because of that. But these things, again, this underinsured coverage, uninsured coverage is really not a lot per month. We're talking 10 to 20, we're not talking a ton of money more a month. I know it's easy to say that when you're trying to scrape by, figure it out, but it's really, if you can really afford that, I would put it on because it adds, actually, a lot of times the biggest chunk is in the liability coverage. Adding on the underinsured and uninsured coverage is really generally not too much more. And, we've seen cases where, people have had tremendous accidents, but the other person only had a $25,000 policy and they didn't have any underinsured coverage. And there's not some, let's be clear, there's not some global pot of money out there that's just sitting there that in case you're in an accident, that's what your insurance is supposed to be for, even though the insurance companies will fight you on it. But that's what your insurance company is supposed to be for. So let's be clear that it is, even though it's hard to say this in light of the fact that the rates are going up, but that even gives more credence to the fact, and I'm not pitching for the insurance companies, trust me, but it's even more important that you have yourself properly protected because more and more people potentially are making the decision to not have the insurance or just have enough to get their car street legal for a registration, but then not have it after that point. So it's so important that you protect yourself and you have yourself with your insurance, even though I know the rates are going up. I'm hoping someday they'll come down. They rarely do. They did during COVID, but that was because all their risk was gone. Nobody was on the road. But in general, they usually don't go backwards. Do you have a question on that?
No, just just to add on, once an insurance company knows that they can get a certain amount, they're not going to get any less than that.
Yeah, I don't see them telling the Department of Insurance, hey, by the way, you know what, we did really well last year in Nevada.
Profits, we don't need any more.
Profits, you know what? Let us give some money. Let's kick some money back. Have fun with that. So. Yeah, listen, one of the things we'll do here, too, is we'll always give you a free look at your policy, let you know what you actually have in coverage, and tell you what we think you should add on. Again, this doesn't benefit us. We're not an insurance brokerage, but we just know, I've done this over 25 years, so I know what to look for in a policy. I know what kind of happens in cases and how you can best protect yourself. Also, it's important to shop your policy around. You know, the fact that you've been with an insurer for 10 years, don't necessarily think that they're going to give you preferable rates for that. You should always be shopping your policy around, if not every year, every other year, at least to see what's out there and make sure you're getting the best coverage. That's what I can tell you on that front. I don't know. Other stuff that we want to throw in there before we wrap up this party?
Just that enforcement is still up as far as traffic enforcement right now.
Yeah.
If you notice, people are driving the speed limit on the freeways.
Yeah, there's still a lot of enforcement. I think we talked about it last time, right? That we were reading articles that through the month of January, especially, that they're on high vigilance. Law enforcement is out there. It doesn't mean that when February comes around, we ramp it up and start going crazy. But the law enforcement is. Certainly has because there was a lot of fatalities last year on the road in Nevada. You'll still, if you're reading the paper, seeing the news, you still see, unfortunately, some every day. Especially you guys we handle these cases. Especially you guys on your motorcycles. You got to be extra careful out there because there's no safety net. You know, it's you and the road. So you got to be super careful out there with the you on your motorcycles. We do help those unfortunate victims, but let's not be a victim of that. But yeah, make sure you're watching out there. There definitely is high vigilance and high alert for the law enforcement and the speeding out there. I think that next time when we'll send out the next message, we'll be doing this next week again. Yep. If there's any question along the way, or you want to reach out with something you want to talk about beforehand, where should they hit us up at?
Our social media.
We're at Eric Blank Injury Attorneys on your Instagram, and also on Facebook there.
And here and also the comments here or in the chat.
Oh yeah, in the comments and chat here always. I should have said that before. I'm getting used to this. So
we're still new, but we're getting used to it.
We're getting new. We get more interesting and exciting, but yes. But this is what we're going to be doing here. So any of the questions, I'd love to talk about these are all real situations, that ones that affect you personally. Really want to be talking about. So hit us up on our social media there. We also have some giveaways going on now with our Spanish radio partners. Yep. So.
We're going to be doing a dash cam giveaway real soon.
Oh, yeah. We have dash cam giveaway coming away soon. So we'll be talking about that. I think we'll be wrapping this up now. I've been going about an hour here. Yep. And thank you for our viewers there. We'll be getting more of you out there. Look out for our emails. Again, our social media, Eric Blank Injury Attorneys. Come there. Give us a comment. Send us a DM or put a post out there. So something you want to hear about. And until next time.